secret negotiation between the Nazis and the Zionists in 1933, which allowed German Jews and their assets to go to Palestine.
A group of Zionists at the same time was quietly negotiating an agreement with the Nazis to allow the immigration of German Jews and the transfer of their assets to Palestine. That deal, reported in August 1933, was the transfer agreement. Palestine, sparsely settled by Jews at the time, was radically changed as a result.
I lived in Palestine from 1933 to 1936, and we saw every week transports of German Jews coming to settle in Palestine.
German Jewish settlement of Palestine was, for a time, official Nazi policy. These photos of Jewish life in Palestine, along with a lengthy text, appeared in 1934 in the Berlin paper Der Angriff. The publisher, Hitler's propaganda minister, Joseph Goebbels. A Nazi visits Palestine was the title of the multi-part series. A medal was struck by Goebbels in commemoration. On one side, the swastika. On the other, the Star of David. Hitler demanded one concession for the transfer agreement, that the call for a boycott of the Reich, raised by Jews here and elsewhere, be rejected by the Zionists. The Zionists made that concession.
Panzer units sweeping east are already deep inside Soviet territory. Chaos multiplies the catastrophe. Without orders from the Kremlin, Red Army field commanders lose control of their units. Dazed, cut off, surrounded, thousands of Soviet soldiers surrender. And at the height of the Wehrmacht's ferocious onslaught, Stalin disappears completely. He has every reason to hide from his people. Captured German newsreel footage shows Soviet frontier troops overwhelmed, a retreat under fire in total confusion. Whole formations surrendering. Hundreds of thousands of men entangled with fleeing civilians in scenes of biblical disorder. Yet there are some Soviet citizens who welcome the invader. To many in the Ukraine, the arrival of the Germans is a heaven-sent opportunity to throw off Stalin's yoke. Local women bless the Germans as they pass. Their menfolk destroy reminders of a man who has terrorized them for years. Stalin is above all stunned by the sheer speed of the German advance.
In 1943, the story changed and the Germans were pushed back, and in the pushback they moved us with them, and we went willingly. There was no moving at gunpoint. Had we stayed back, the communists would have taken us and executed us or shipped us to Siberia. So we very willingly retreated with the Germans. Food was getting short, the horses were getting sick, the road was getting narrowed, it was extremely cold. When I think of the war, I do not think of hunger so much as of cold. It was always, always cold. And then of course once the winter came, it became harder and harder. We had to often stay overnight in strange houses. The army would confiscate houses, would put the refugees there. The army protected us to the end. The army never ever let us down, never let us down to the very end.
The snow fell, covering the dreams and ideals, and the snow fell, freezing the blood and the wheels, and the snow fell. They had to keep warm for survival, and the snow fell.
Welcome back everyone to GGN. This is part 4 for this news report today. There'll be 5 parts. Okay, this article I have is Nazi commander found living in U.S. haven since 1949. That's why I showed the first couple of videos. There's actually another one too. I think it was the Ukraine where the Germans came in and basically at the last second came in and basically protected the town against Russian divisions coming in there, and they knew well what was coming. The Russians just came. They didn't just burn everything to the ground and kill people. They raped everything that was living. And there was many people in surrounding Eastern European countries that that hated the Russians. They weren't exactly pro-German, but they sympathized with them. A top commander of the Nazi SS led hit squad. It says here he led a hit squad. An officer in an SS division accused of burning villages to the ground during World War II has been living in Minnesota since 1949 after tricking U.S. immigration officials. So he's a member of the SS-led Ukrainian Self-Defense Legion in 43 and later an officer in SS Galician Division, which is actually Poland. This is a complete voluntary army. Says here that in America this is a relatively easy case. If he was the commander of a unit that carried out atrocities, that's a no-brainer, says Zuroff, the lead Nazi hunter in Simon Wiesenthal Center in Jerusalem, told the AP. Even in Germany, if the guy was the commander of a unit, then even if they can't show he personally pulled the trigger, he bears responsibility. Now, I'm not saying whether the Holocaust happened or not. I'm not going to go into the argument. But what I will say is that you saw in the beginning of the video that there was many opportunities for Jews to leave Germany. They were even paid to do it. There was part of an agreement with the Zionists. There's conspiracy theories about how the Russians came in and set up camps and put in the set it up to make it look like they had killed a bunch of people through gas chambers. But I think that's what they refer to as the great stab in the back, which is they made that agreement and then they went ahead and just did what they did. Just like World War I, to put the entire blame of the war on them. Like when they were talking about Poland, the Poland uprising. Poland had every opportunity to make peace with Germany, and that's what they wanted. But Poland didn't want peace. They were kind of like Turkey right now. They're trying to create this empire or something. And they knew that they had the backing of the UK that would step in at any time. So, you know, the Polish are guilty of carrying out atrocities and Danzig, it's well documented. Nobody says anything about that. Nobody's going after any of the Polish infantry or Polish government representatives for carrying out those atrocities, let alone Dresden. And we know that there's not going to be nothing said about experimental bombs drop on the Japanese civilians. We're not going to hear anything about Eisenhower's Holocaust, his slaughter of 1.7 million Germans, let alone the Bolsheviks and Stalin, who killed countless millions of people. God, I hate the Germans, said Dwight David Eisenhower in his letter to his wife in September 1944. So you can go in there and check it out. It talks about all of the prisoner of war camps that were in Americans' hands, 200 of these war camps scattered across Germany. I think they even talked about Poland. The 1 million that weren't sent to the gulags, handed over to the Russians, the German soldiers, the ones that weren't sent to Russia to basically die and never be seen again, were sent to these camps where they were basically out in the open in the elements with hardly any food or anything, basically to die. Much like the Union did, the North did in the, quote, Civil War. Everyone talks about Andersonville and the Confederates' camps. What they don't talk about is they had actual prison camps up in the North, actually in Chicago, bedded in. Many people didn't even know that they existed, the city, neighborhood people. And sometimes when they did find out, they'd go in there and help them out because they realized that the situation with the Confederate prisoners up in the Union camps were just as worse, if not worse. They had the resources. The Union was very wealthy compared to the South, and they had the resources to take care of these prisoners, but they didn't want to. They were sent there to die. Netanyahu opens new Auschwitz exhibit. Israeli Prime Minister also says Israel will defend itself from a new Holocaust. They dedicated the exhibit at the Auschwitz death camp in Poland today and used the occasion to issue a warning to Iran and other Israeli enemies. From here, the place that attests to desire to destroy us, I, Prime Minister of Israel, the state of the Jewish people, say to all the nations of the world, the state of Israel will do whatever is necessary to prevent another Holocaust. Says if there is Holocaust deniers, have them come to Block 27 and go over one name at a time. And I already covered this. Germany to pay nearly $1 billion for Holocaust survivor care. So the Germans are going to keep shelling out money for something that they didn't do. I mean, these are dead things that dead people did to dead people. Kind of like hunting down these former German soldiers who are, basically on their deathbeds and and respirators and stuff like that. These witch hunts by Jews who just won't let it go. And that's why they bury all the history in Germany, because they don't want them to start to dig for facts and start to see what was the cause behind World War II, who was funding it, how basically it was Zionists that were responsible for carrying out all of the stuff that supposedly happened to these large populations of Jews, 6 million, in order to get their, not just to get their own state, because they already had their own state like we talked about. It was so that no one could ever question Zionism or Jewish supremacism. On that note.
It's not looking good. Hashem's not calm. Man, you're like a disease. And the truth. And I want to try. So come on, get out of here. I wouldn't even stop. Let's go. What do you want, boy? What do you want, boy?
He's the driver.
He's the guy. Okay. You better be the driver. Why wouldn't you drive you around? Why wouldn't you drive your fucking butt around? I would drive you around. Wish Al-Qaeda would drive you around. There's been 2 suicide bus drivers in the city already.
Shut up.
Slam the bus straight into a wall, man. You retarded girl, you're so retarded, man. Your brain is gonna turn to blood. I smell 770, may your brain turn to blood. 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 May your brain turn to blood.
You need to lay off that crack.
I'm calling the Mashiach to kill you. Serve the Jews or die.
You have no idea what you're talking about.
I'm part of the Rebels campaign, and I don't ever want the Messiah coming ever. I want you to be completely abandoned, and I want you to turn into a slave. There's no point in your reason. Ever want the Messiah coming ever. I want you to be completely abandoned, and I want you to turn into a slave. There's no point in your reason. I'm a Jew. Every mitzvah I kill you, retarded Nazis. Yafi Adanenu, Morenu, Barabenu, Melech, Hamashiach, Noam Ba'ed. Yafi Adanenu, Morenu, Barabenu, Melech, Hamashiach, Noam Ba'ed. Yafi Adanenu, Morenu, Barabenu, Melech, Hamashiach, Noam Ba'ed. Every mitzvah I do kills you Nazis. Is there a psychiatrist? Every Nazi I kill is all for the Jewish people. Now shut your nasty mouth up.